I sat at the dinner table, listening to the same conversation I had heard my entire life. My mother, Linda, was beaming at my twin sister, Emma, as she talked about her upcoming work trip to Singapore. My father, Robert, nodded along, proud as always. I had spent weeks preparing my presentation, working late nights, perfecting every detail, hoping this would finally be the moment when my hard work would be recognized. But in the end, the opportunity went to Emma. "We're so proud of you." "Sweetheart," my mother said, reaching over to squeeze Emma's hand. "It's such a huge milestone in your career. And guess what? Your dad and I decided we'll come with you. We wouldn't want you to feel alone during such an important moment." I blinked. I felt a pit forming in my stomach, the same one that had been there since childhood. Emma gasped dramatically, covering her mouth with her hands. "Really? Oh my God, that's amazing. It'll be so much fun." I waited. I waited for them to turn to me, to say something, anything, to include me in their plans. Instead, my mother finally glanced in my direction, an afterthought. "Oh, Natalie, while we're gone, can you take care of the house? You know how delicate my orchids are in the sunroom. They need to be watered daily." Emma smirked. "Don't worry, sis. I'll send you plenty of pictures. You can live vicariously through me." The words hit like a slap. My father just kept eating, staring down at his plate, like he always did whenever he knew my mother and Emma were being unfair. I swallowed down the bitterness rising in my throat, pressing my fork into the food on my plate. "Of course," I murmured. After dinner, I excused myself and drove home to my tiny apartment, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My entire life had been a cycle of being ignored, being second best, being the dependable but forgettable one. I sat in my car outside my apartment for a long time, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Then I made a decision. I pulled out my phone and searched for an address I hadn't thought about in years. Uncle Jack. I barely knew him. He had been erased from our family narrative, a cautionary tale my mother used to tell us about what happened when someone didn't follow the perfect script. But suddenly, he was the only person I wanted to see. I found the address and drove. Jack's house was nothing like my parents'. It was small, cozy, and a little messy. A motorcycle sat in the driveway, its parts scattered around as if he had been in the middle of working on it. I hesitated before knocking on the door. A few seconds later, the door swung open, and Jack stood there, oil-stained hands wiping on an old rag. He looked at me, confused at first. Then his eyes widened with recognition. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, shaking his head with a slow grin. "Little Natalie." I swallowed hard. I didn't know where else to go. Jack stepped aside, motioning me in without hesitation. Inside, his house was cluttered but warm, shelves lined with old books and car magazines, a faint smell of coffee and motor oil in the air. We sat at his kitchen table, mismatched mugs in front of us, as I told him everything. I told him about growing up in Emma's shadow, about every birthday, every holiday, every moment where I had been pushed aside so she could shine. I told him about the Singapore trip, about how they didn't even think to include me. Jack listened, really listened. When I was done, he leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Your mom's always been like that," he said. "She cares too much about appearances. She was the golden child growing up, just like Emma. I was the disappointment because I didn't want to play their game." I frowned. "But you're successful now. You have your own business." He chuckled. "Yeah, but it wasn't a career that fit into their version of success. To them, I was just a mechanic. But let me tell you something, Natalie. Getting kicked out of that perfect family was the best thing that ever happened to me. I got to build something real, something that mattered to me, without trying to impress people who were never going to see my worth." I looked down at my hands. "I don't know how to do that." Jack studied me for a moment, then stood up. "Come outside for a second." I followed him to the driveway, where he pointed to a sleek black BMW parked to the side. "It's yours," he said. I stared at him. "What?" He tossed me the keys. "Consider it a graduation present. Late, but better than never." "Jack, I can't accept this," I stammered. "This is too much." He shrugged. "Nah, someone needs to show you that your accomplishments matter." "Let it be me." I gripped the keys, speechless. For the first time in my life, someone was celebrating me. The next day, I pulled into work in the BMW, parking it where everyone could see. Emma's expression when she saw it was priceless. "Whoa, where did you get that?" she asked, trying to mask the jealousy in her voice. "Uncle Jack," I said simply, walking past her. At lunch, I got a text from my mother. "Mom, what were you thinking? Visiting Jack. People will talk. Stay away from him." I stared at my phone, a slow smile spreading across my lips. Me? No. The next day, they returned from Singapore, stepping out of their car with luggage and shopping bags. Emma froze when she saw the BMW parked in our driveway. "What the hell, Natalie?" she screeched. "Where did you get this car?" I stepped out, standing tall. "Uncle Jack," I said. My mother's face turned red. "Return it. Now." "No." Emma scoffed, flipping her hair. "Nat, don't be selfish. I work in sales and presentation matters. I should be the one driving it." I laughed, genuinely laughed. "You just got back from a luxury vacation I wasn't invited to, and now you want my car?" Linda's voice hardened. "If you don't give me those keys right now, you can find somewhere else to live." I walked to my trunk, popped it open, and pulled out my suitcases. "Funny you should say that," I said. "I was planning on leaving anyway." The look on their faces was unforgettable. As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror one last time. I parked the BMW right in front of my parents' house, making sure it was the first thing they saw when they got back from Singapore. I didn't have to wait long. Emma was the first to step out of the car, her designer luggage rolling behind her. She had a bright smile, probably still basking in the afterglow of being the center of attention in Singapore. But the second her eyes landed on my car, the smile froze. "What the hell?" she muttered, her brows knitting together. Then louder, "Whose car is that?" I leaned casually against the hood, arms crossed. "Mine," Emma scoffed. "No, seriously, where did you rent it?" Before I could respond, Mom and Dad got out of the car. Mom's face immediately twisted into something between confusion and fury. "Natalie," she said sharply, "where did you get that car?" I didn't move. "Uncle Jack gave it to me." Dad stiffened. Mom's face drained of color. "What?" Her voice dropped into a dangerous whisper. "He bought it for me. A gift. Because he's proud of me." I let the words hang in the air, knowing exactly how much they would sting. Emma let out a shrill laugh. "Oh, this is rich. Mom, Dad, do you hear this? She thinks she's special now because she got a car from a dropout mechanic." Mom snapped her gaze to me. "You will return it. Right now." "No." Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. "Natalie, I will not have people talking about how my daughter is associating with that man. He's not family. He's a disgrace." I tilted my head. "Really? Because he's treated me more like family in the last month than you ever have." Dad, who had been standing silently, finally spoke up. "Natalie, let's not turn this into a fight." "Oh no, Dad," I said, my voice ice cold. "Let's absolutely turn this into a fight. Because I'm done." Emma rolled her eyes. "God, Nat, you're so dramatic. You're really going to make this about you, huh?" I felt something snap inside me. "You know what, Emma? Yeah, I am. Because for once, I'm not going to let you walk all over me. I worked my ass off for that Singapore opportunity. But you got it because you kissed up to the right people. I built a career through actual talent while you schmoozed your way into yours. And what do Mom and Dad do? They throw you a goddamn parade while they tell me to water their plants?" Emma's face darkened. "Oh, so this is jealousy. Classic Natalie. Always bitter when things don't go her way." I took a step closer. "Jealousy? No. I just finally realized that this family will never see me as more than your shadow." Mom exhaled sharply. "Natalie, enough." "No, Mom. You had your chance to listen to me. But you never did you? My entire life, you've made me feel like I was never enough. You celebrated Emma's mediocre achievements and ignored mine. You took her on vacations while I stayed behind. You made sure she had the best opportunities while I had to fight for scraps. And you expect me to keep smiling and playing along? Well, I'm done." I walked to the trunk of my car, popped it open, and pulled out my packed bags. Emma's jaw dropped. Wait, what are you doing? Mom's eyes widened. Natalie, don't you dare. I turned to face them. You told me if I didn't hand over the car, I should find somewhere else to live. So here we are. For the first time, Dad looked genuinely alarmed. Natalie, you don't have to do this? Yes, Dad, I said, giving him a small, sad smile. I do. Mom looked like she wanted to grab my wrist and physically stop me, but she hesitated, torn between her need to control and her need to maintain appearances. Emma, however, was furious. Oh my God, you're really doing this. You're really turning this into a whole thing. What, you think you're the main character now? I laughed, actually laughed. You know what, Emma? I think I finally am. I threw my bags into the back seat and slid into the driver's seat. Don't worry, I said, looking at my mother one last time. I'll send you plenty of pictures. You can live vicariously through me. And with that, I drove off, leaving them standing in the driveway, their perfect little world cracking right before their eyes. I moved into my own apartment a week later. It wasn't much, just a small, modern one-bedroom in a quiet part of the city. But it was mine. No one could tell me what to do, where to go, or how I should feel. Uncle Jack helped me move in. He didn't say much as we unpacked my things, just gave me that knowing look every now and then. After we finished, he pulled out 2 beers from a 6-pack and handed me one. To new beginnings, he said. I clinked my bottle against his. Emma, of course, didn't take my leaving well. For the first few days, she flooded my phone with texts, each more frantic than the last. Nat, this is stupid. Come home already. I don't understand why you're doing this. Do you really hate us that much? When I didn't reply, her tone shifted. You're being so selfish. Mom and Dad are upset. Do you even care? You're making a big deal out of nothing? Like always you think you're better than us now? Newsflash. You're still the same boring, forgettable Nat. A car doesn't change that. That last one stung. Not because she was right, but because it proved she still didn't get it. She never would. I blocked her number. Mom tried calling too, but I let her go to voicemail every time. I knew what she would say. Natalie, this is childish. Family is family. Stop this nonsense and come home. Think about how this looks to everyone. People are asking questions, but for the first time, I didn't care about appearances. I didn't care about what people thought. I was finally free from the constant comparisons, the dismissive comments, the feeling of never being enough. Meanwhile, things weren't going as smoothly for Emma. Without me constantly being around to help with her work, she started falling behind. Her natural charm could only take her so far before people began noticing the lack of actual results. And then, the final blow came. The Singapore project, the one she had stolen right from under me, fell apart within the first month. The team struggled with the logistics she had ignored. Deadlines were missed, and clients were unimpressed. Her so-called people-first approach couldn't compensate for the fact that she had no concrete plans or data to back it up. I heard about it through the office grapevine. Did you hear about Emma's disaster in Singapore? One of my coworkers whispered near the coffee station. Yeah, turns out networking can only get you so far when you don't actually know what you're doing. She was humiliated. She came back from Singapore earlier than expected. No triumphant return, no proud Instagram posts. She didn't even try to contact me again after that. As for my parents, they were left dealing with the aftermath. The golden child they had put all their faith in had failed spectacularly. And the daughter they had overlooked, she was thriving. It must have driven them crazy. But that wasn't my problem anymore. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was living for myself. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing. I wasn't looking back. And to anyone reading this, I want you to take something away from my story. Don't waste your life trying to earn the love of people who refuse to see your worth. Don't let their validation be the measure of your success. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you can do. And if you've ever felt like the forgotten sibling, the overlooked one, just remember, you don't need their spotlight. You can build your own. Let me know in the comments, have you ever been the forgotten child? How did you break free? I'd love to hear your stories.